Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We still have about 2 minutes left, so we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's 3 o'clock, so I will get started very soon. Just give one more minute for a few people to trickle in. All right, let's get started. Thank you all so much for joining today. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website, which my colleague Erica just put in the chat. The slides are available as PDF as well if you want to be following along as I'm going through the presentation. So hello, my name is Alex. I am the Human Dimensions Research Manager with the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program. And today I will be talking about our new funding opportunity, which is called Regional Resiliency and Vulnerability Assessments. So hopefully you guys have all seen the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, and we're glad you're here. So let's get started. All right, so just an agenda for today. And before I go over the agenda, as Erica said in the chat, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question box and we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk a little bit about what are regional resiliency and vulnerability assessments, talk about the objective of this funding opportunity, as well as the different project options that you can apply for. We'll go over what are some of the priority elements of this proposal, information about the award itself. We'll do a quick review of some of the grant systems that you have to register for to apply for this funding opportunity. There is a required letter of interest that will be due, and so we'll go over the requirements for that as well as of the full proposal itself. How proposals will be scored, so the evaluation criteria, and then some key dates for this proposal process, as well as some time for Q&A, like I said, at the end. So what is a regional vulnerability assessment and why is it important? So regional resiliency and vulnerability assessments, which we call RVAs, are interdisciplinary projects that supplement the physical, chemical, and biological science of ocean and coastal acidification with social science to assess regional vulnerability. By bringing together the physical and the social sciences, projects can inform strategies that build resilience or adaptation to ocean change that are responsive to community values and needs. This information is intended to provide national to local marine resource decision makers with information in order to develop adaptation strategies to ocean and coastal acidification, as well as the related stressors or impacts that are affecting our ocean and coastal ecosystems, as well as ecosystem services and the human communities that depend on them. So the RVAs are looking at this objective. How does ocean and coastal acidification in the context of changing ocean conditions affect dependent human communities? Some of the different things that this involves or could involve is an identification and engagement of interested partners and groups, an assessment of their needs, and generation of products and tools that support management, adaptation, and resilience to ocean and coastal acidification. This is not the first time that the Ocean Acidification Program has funded regional vulnerability assessments. So if you did apply to the FY20 NOFO, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, you might have noticed there's a few changes. So in case you did apply and you're wondering what's different, substantively, the goals and content of the NOFO remain unchanged in terms of, the broader objective. We did, based on feedback from PIs, we did provide some additional clarity on what an RVA is or what an RVA could look like. In particular, we're pointing people towards the newly released Interagency Working Group on Ocean Acidification's Vulnerability Assessment, which is linked in the NOFO. We also listed some guiding terms and phrases for key words and phrases, as well as pointed people towards some other frameworks in relevant disciplines that have been used to assess vulnerability to the climate changes. We also tried to take a little bit more of a multi-stressor approach, so an emphasis on ocean acidification in the context of multiple stressors, and co-production of knowledge in partnership with the intended end user groups. Also, another change is there's this great resource and tool called the OA Info Exchange, and we created a team on the website specifically for resiliency and vulnerability assessments to help foster building new connections between researchers and interested partners. So again, this is all linked in the NOFO, but I really want to encourage people to take advantage of the team on the OA Info Exchange to build some connections, particularly in this proposal development phase. So there are 3 different options that you can apply for your project. So option 1 is a regional vulnerability assessment, and I'll go into that in a second. Option 2 is a data synthesis collaboration, and option 3 is a foundational community workshop. So any project must align with one of these options. So an RVA, proposals submitted under this option should develop an RVA examining the impact of ocean and coastal acidification and related stressors on marine ecosystems and human communities. It can include both data synthesis activities and community meetings or workshops. The size of the region should be scaled to the needs of the intended end users. And these can be new projects or distinct additions to existing RVAs if this is an RVA project that has, for example, been funded by OAP in the past. Option 2 is data synthesis collaboration. So proposals submitted under this option should focus only on conducting data synthesis that are relevant to a future RVA examining the impact of ocean and coastal acidification and related stressors on marine ecosystems and human communities. Applicants should identify a user group that will utilize the data synthesis product for the purpose of conducting an RVA and include those users early on in project work. Or proposals should describe how the proposed activities and outputs would fit into a future RVA. And lastly, option 3, foundational community workshop. This option is for regions that have not yet conducted a data synthesis activity or established an RVA in the past. The primary outcome of this option is a community workshop or a series of small meetings that will inform a future RVA. The workshop should bring together stakeholders from various backgrounds and disciplines to promote interdisciplinary partnerships and discuss what the community would like to see in an RVA. The workshop should also identify research needs and gaps in the region that are needed before a future RVA could be completed. So all projects must propose one of these options or must fit in with one of these options. All right, in terms of priority elements, there are 5 different elements and proposals must address one or more of them. A single proposal is not required to address all of these elements. However, proposals are expected to be interdisciplinary. So number one, a clear summary of the information. This is a clear summary of information that end users and stakeholders have identified as requirements for sound decision-making related to adaptation to ocean and coastal acidification and other stressors, or an actionable plan for generating this information. Number two, a plan to effectively structure and employ models and other tools that utilize chemical, climate, biological, ecological, and/or socioeconomic information to assess the vulnerability and resilience of marine ecosystems and human communities to scenarios of ocean and coastal acidification and related stressors. A plan to generate techniques for presenting multi-dimensional information on ocean and coastal acidification and other stressors that aid in the use of RVAs for adaptation planning and other decision-making purposes. A synthesis of existing data to produce the information and understanding on which RVAs are based. And lastly, an assessment of whether current management strategies for coastal and marine resources and communities are robust to scenarios of ocean and coastal acidification and related stressors, conduct management strategy evaluations to assess the success of alternative management options under different scenarios, and/or to identify and test how to effectively insert ocean and coastal acidification related information into management processes. So proposals must address one or more of these elements. All right, just some basic information on the award itself. So pending appropriations, we have a total of up to $3 million to put towards this call in FY25. We anticipate funding between 1 and 6 projects for up to 3 years in duration. And the funding amount per project and per year, which as you saw in the option slide varies, is between 100 to 400,000. All right, so in order to apply for this opportunity, there are 3 systems that you have to register for: SAM.gov, grants.gov, and ERA Commons. And before you start this process, it's important to check with if your institution has like a grants manager or a grants team, someone that serves in that capacity. Check with them to see if there is already an existing institutional account for these systems, because your institution may already have one. And processing new system registration can take up to 4 weeks. So we really want to encourage applicants to do this sooner rather than later. And we do recognize that this is quite a burdensome process. And so if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll do our best to be able to help you with this process. I've provided direct links for getting started with the registration system, for getting started with the registration process in each of these systems. And if you look in section 4 of the NOFO, which is titled Application and Submission Information, there's much more information about registering for these, but we will go briefly into each one now. All right, so SAM.gov. Prior to registering with ERA Commons, applicant organizations must have what we call a UEI, a unique entity identifier, and you get that on SAM.gov. Registration on SAM.gov can take 2+ weeks, and it requires annual renewal. We've linked guidance for the registration, and so you would follow those steps. As Erica said, all links are accessible via the slides on the website and also in the NOFO. So hopefully you can easily access all of these registration guides. So that's the first system, SAM.gov. The second system is grants.gov. So in order to submit an application, organizations must be registered in grants.gov. You can register after receiving that UEI from SAM.gov. So this is something that you do after you get the UEI from SAM.gov. Prior to submitting in grants.gov, application organizations must first register with ERA, which is what I'll discuss next. So you have to register with ERA prior to submitting the application on grants.gov. And registration can take 2 to 4 weeks. And we've also provided applicant registration guidance for grants.gov as well. The last system is called ERA Commons. So as I mentioned, prior to submitting in grants.gov, the applicant organization must register in ERA Commons. And you can start this registration process while you're waiting for the final SAM.gov approval of the UEI. So this is something you can get started on before you have that UEI. However, you must complete the SAM.gov registration in order to submit the final application. Registration can be completed by the organization's signing official, which is a designated person in your organization, and it can take up to 4 weeks. We've provided registration guidance for ERA Commons as well, but as you can see, there are many systems you have to register for, and each can take a few weeks. So again, just really want to emphasize to anyone considering applying to get started on registering for these systems sooner rather than later. Check with your institution first to see if you might already have active accounts in these systems. All right, so LOIs, letters of interest, are required for this call. They are due on November 20th by 11:59 p.m. and they should be no more than 2 pages. So we're keeping it pretty simple, or short, I should say. What you should include in here is the type of project that you're applying for, so whether it was option 1, 2, or 3, a tentative project title, the name and contact information and institution of all of the PIs, and you should specify who is the lead PI, an approximate cost of the project per year, as well as the overall total estimated cost, a problem statement and a response to end user needs. So what is the issue that you are addressing and why? A brief summary of the work to be completed, methodology to be used, end user group engagement, and coordination plan. Again, LOIs are due on November 20th. They are required and they should be no more than 2 pages. The full proposal itself has several required elements, and I'm going to walk you through each of those elements now. So first is what we have is called Standard Form 424, SF 424. This is a federal form that is required in the grants.gov application package. It essentially serves as like a cover page to your proposal. The NOFO has a link to a copy of the form. If you want to see it ahead of time, it's in section 4, application and submission information. This form is embedded in the application package, but I did provide that copy of the form if you want to see what it looks like or the type of information that you'll be required to fill out. So that's SF 424. Next is the summary title page. This should be 1 page max, no longer. It should include the basics like the project title, PI name and contact information, which project option you are applying for, funding per fiscal year and overall total, as well as a short abstract or project summary. And again, this should be total no more than 1 page. Next is the project description. This should be no more than 17 pages. And this is really the meat of the proposal where you put forth your proposed research narrative. So what topic are you addressing? What are the scientific objectives? What are relevant policy mandates? As well as what is your data management plan? So project description, no more than 17 pages. The applications to management narrative is the section that looks at establishing the connection to relevant resource management needs by explicitly identifying the end user group. So who is the target audience? We are requiring a management or technical advisory committee for all projects. So putting forth the list of the advisory committee in that section would be useful. And we also are requiring letters of support from these advisory committee members in the application package. And part of the reason we're doing this is because we're trying to encourage that initial partnership development, if they don't already exist, in this proposal development phase, rather than saying we're gonna, have this partnership with this group, and after we get the award, we're gonna go build that partnership. We want partnerships to be being built in the proposal development phase so that there's really a co-production of knowledge and information in the proposal. All right, the rest are more straightforward: list of references, milestones and deliverables. We include a template for that, biographical sketch of each PI, what current and pending support you might have had in the past or now, if any permits are required, a list of the permits, what accomplishments you have achieved from prior federal support. Next is a budget narrative and justification. So this should be a detailed justification that supports all of the proposed budget categories per fiscal year. So personnel costs should be broken out by the name of the PI and the number of months and % of time requested per year per PI. And we've provided a budget narrative guidance link in the NOFO. So I encourage you to check that out for more information on the budget narrative. CD 511, this is another federal form that is embedded in the grants.gov application package. And this is related to whether or not your institution conducts any lobbying. And so a copy of that form is also linked in the NOFO if you would like to see what that looks like. Next is standard form 424B, another federal form. It must be signed for non-construction programs, which these are non-construction programs, so that needs to be signed. It's also linked in the NOFO. And the last standard form is 424A. So this is the budget form. It's separated by columns into each fiscal year. And each subaward, if your project is going to have any subawards, each subawardee needs to submit this form. If you're not having subawards, it's just on behalf of your institution. Further guidance and a copy of this form are also linked in the NOFO. Next is a statement on diversity and inclusion. So this is looking at how the proposed activity broadens the participation of underrepresented groups. Letters of support, these are on behalf of partnering institutions. These could be formal partners, it could be informal partnerships. An example, if you're having a subawardee or a community group with whom the project intends to interact, it could be from one of those groups. And this is, like I was mentioning before with the advisory committee, this is intended to promote the development of partnerships in this proposal development process rather than afterwards. And lastly, a collaborators list. So everything that I just mentioned will be directly submitted through grants.gov, but the collaborators list is an Excel sheet, and this is something that you can email directly to me. So this is the one piece that won't be part of that application package. And this includes a list of all collaborators, advisors, and advisees for each PI to complete with their corresponding institutions that those collaborators are with. And this is important because it helps to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest in our proposal review process. So please email the collaborators list directly to me. In terms of how we are scoring proposals, there are 5 criteria that we are looking at. I'll go into each of these in more depth, but just to go over all of them first. Number 1 is importance and relevance and applicability of the proposal to program goals. This is weighted at 35%. Technical and scientific merit, also 35%. Overall qualification of applicants, 15%. Outreach, education, and diversity, 10%. And project costs, 5%. So when and if you submit proposals, this is how we will be rating your proposals and scoring to determine final score. So let's delve into the first one. So importance and relevance and applicability of proposed projects to the program goals. So this criterion looks at whether there is intrinsic value in the proposed work and/or relevance to NOAA, federal, regional, state, or local activities. This criterion ascertains whether the proposal demonstrates a comprehensive understanding of the issue and clearly articulates and addresses at least one management or stakeholder need. This criterion also assesses the potential impact of the project. All outputs should be feasible and likely to lead to the identified outcomes. This looks at whether the proposal identifies and clearly articulates how planned outputs will be used within the context of the described management need. Next is technical and scientific merit. So this is broken into two subsections. So the first, which is weighted at 30%, looks at whether the approach is technically sound or innovative, if the methods are appropriate, whether there are clear goals and objectives. This also addresses whether the approach is appropriate for the problem that is being addressed, if it integrates the end users, and is likely to produce the planned outputs. Proposals must identify and demonstrate access to appropriate data sources for the planned analyses. And the remaining 5% of this criterion looks at whether the data management plan ensures that the data collected and/or created will be made available to general users in a timely manner, free of charge or at minimum cost. So this includes whether data will be archived at NCEI, which is where NOAA requires it, or if it is determined that another data portal is better suited for social science archival. Addressing that as well. So data management plans are required if your project will be creating new data. Next is overall qualifications of the applicants. This is also broken into two sections. 10% is looking at whether the applicant has the necessary education, experience, training, facilities, administrative resources to accomplish the project. This includes whether the applicant has the appropriate expertise and experience for the proposed technical methods and end user integration. This also looks at if the required letters of support for the advisory committee are present and the degree to which they show the potential for co-production of research. And the remaining 5% is special consideration that will be given to previously funded projects that were either option 2, which is the data synthesis collaboration, or option 3, the workshop, who are now proposing to build upon that work and take the project to the next level as an option 1, which is the full-scale RVA, or the option 2 if it was for example, if it was a community workshop that was funded in the past that is now applying to the next level of data synthesis project. So that remaining 5% applies towards projects that have previously put forward RVA proposals. Project costs, 5%. This is looking at if the budget is realistic and commensurate with the project needs and time frame. Outreach, education, and diversity. So this criterion looks at whether the project provides a focused and effective education and outreach strategy regarding NOAA's mission to protect the nation's natural resources. This criterion also evaluates the diversity and inclusion statement that should be included in your proposal. So a summary of important dates. You're here today, so you made it to the first one, the informational webinar. Good job. We are having a virtual workshop on October 9th from 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is not required, but previously funded RVA projects from the FY20 call will be sharing, as those projects are starting to wrap up, they'll be sharing some of their project outputs and outcomes. So if you're interested in hearing what some previously funded RVA projects have done, you definitely should attend. Also, if you're interested in applying to this FY25 call and you're looking to form some new partnerships or collaborations, this will be an opportunity for you to meet some of those PIs and other potential partners, and maybe you would put forth a joint proposal together. So hopefully it's valuable for your networking as well. So we encourage you to register for that workshop on October 9th. The registration link is provided in the NOFO. Also, we will be having optional office hours on one date each month between now and when proposals are due in February. So let's say you're working on your proposal and you have a question that you'd like to ask the program managers. You're welcome to come by. It's Google Meets. Just pop in, ask any questions you might have. We want to be accessible to you throughout this process. So if you have any questions as you're working on things, we encourage you to join the office hours, also linked in the NOFO. LOIs, which are required, as I've mentioned, are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 20th. And full proposals are due March 5th, also by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So these are all important dates. You should flag in your calendars. They're listed in the NOFO, and any sort of registration or meeting links to join us are all provided there as well. So in a nutshell, that is this FY25 RVA funding opportunity. We're really excited that you're interested in this. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, now is the time that we can review some of those. So if you have questions and you haven't already, please feel free to put those questions in the chat, in the question chat. And I'm just going to take a look at that now. It looks like we have one so far. The number of the components are completed and elsewise assisted by pre-award coordinators at various universities. Just wanted to put some faculty here at ease. Okay, so this was a comment. Thank you to whoever put that. But yes, a lot. If you're with, for example, an academic institution, you most likely have like a grants office and coordinators who help with these sort of administrative portions of grant application processes. If you're with a smaller institution or a nonprofit, you may not have that. So it really depends on the type of institution, but definitely if you have other team members who are helping with this, it will make the application process a little bit less of a lift. Are proposals required to have end users as collaborators before submitting the proposal, or is it okay for proposals to include knowledge co-production with communities in the first phase of the project? Will projects with existing partnerships be prioritized? So really our intention in this is that those partners or those proposed partners are involved in the proposal formulation phase of the project rather than, just being approached afterwards. So we aren't necessarily weighing, we're looking at if the partnerships are there. There's not necessarily an exact criteria that says, is this partnership existing? But I think through the demonstration of who will be on the advisory committee, which is required ahead of time, as well as the letters of support, that will demonstrate some of that. But really the intention in this is for those partnerships to not necessarily be fully established, but to be starting to have those conversations now, so that when you put the proposals forward, and if you are to be selected for funding, that you're not starting that then, really. And so, these are due in March, so and it is, end of September. So also, if it's not something that you've already started to work on, there is time to start that partnership building process now. I hope that answered your question. I may have missed this, but are there any feedback or notification steps that happen between LOI submission and receipt and final proposal submission? For example, is it assumed that all submitted LOIs will submit full proposals, or will some be selected to continue on? Thank you for asking this. So I actually did not mention this, but we will be providing feedback on the LOIs. So we will have reviewers who are reviewing the LOIs and providing feedback, and we will provide that feedback to you. Anyone is still, well, you have to make an LOI, but depending on the feedback, it's your decision whether or not you move forward with a full proposal, but we can put forward our recommendations of whether or not we think you should submit a proposal. But yes, there will be a step there in between the LOI, receiving that feedback, and then taking that and forming your full proposal. Thanks for flagging that. Can you provide examples of the type of information that would be collected and summarized from the foundational community workshop option? So this is a great question, and this is, I think if you're interested in this, I definitely encourage you to attend the October 9th workshop. One of the projects that you will be hearing from was a previously funded RVA project that was a workshop option in Puerto Rico. Mostly what they collected and summarized was stakeholder perceptions of ocean acidification and of it as a threat impacting their communities. So it was primarily a collection of social science information, which we are encouraging. This proposal is not intended to gather any new, it should only take existing like biological or physical data. There shouldn't be collection of any new biological or physical data. So the data collection in the workshop is going to be social science data. I hope that answered your question, but each of the projects will be presenting out in the workshop, and so they will go more into depth on some of their findings that they were funded to do in Puerto Rico. Let me see, just looking to see if there's any other questions. Okay, can you share a little more about the review process and reviewers for proposals? Given the emphasis on interdisciplinary and social scientists, will these disciplines be favored in terms of reviewers? So our aim is to have the review panel represent a variety of disciplines, but because this proposal is intended to really be a collaboration between social science and physical science, we will have like a large number of reviewers that bring that social science expertise. I think I answered all of the questions. Thank you to Erica for helping answer them as well online. Just making sure that there's no other questions. Can I remind you of the NOFO? Not exactly sure what that means, but there is a notice of funding opportunity, which is probably a document that you saw. We're widely circulating it right now. It's the long document that talks about this funding opportunity and outlines, every component. Basically, this session right now was a summary of the NOFO, and the NOFO goes more into depth of all of these components. But NOFO stands for Notice of Funding Opportunity and was the document that you probably have seen being circulated for this call. Also, it is posted on our website for the Ocean Acidification Program under funding announcements or funding opportunities. The document is housed on grants.gov, but the link for it is on our website. I hope that answered your question about the NOFO. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to put them in the question box if you have them. Thank you. Erica just provided that link that I was talking about, which is the link to our website. And that link brings you directly to grants.gov, where the actual funding opportunity lives, as well as the related documents, which include primarily the NOFO. So I don't think that we have any other questions at this time, but if you do have them down the road, please reach out to me. Again, my name is Alex. I have provided my email here, and I'm the point of contact for this opportunity. So any questions that you have throughout this process, whether it's now or in a few months, please reach out to me. I'm sure questions will come up along the way. Please share this opportunity with your colleagues and partners. We're really looking to get a broad array of audiences involved, and we hope to receive proposals from you. And so the next step would be working on those LOIs, and we hope to see you in the October 9th workshop as well. And I'll be here if you have any questions. So thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for your interest in the RVA program.